They looked up at me with their big brown eyes, and they asked, "Are you part of our family now?" They asked this in the casually devastating way that only a 7-year-old could. It reminded me of the time a few months earlier when they held my hand for the first time while we were walking down the street. Not a big deal, just reached up with the casual trust a child can have. Both times, my eyes welled up with tears. But in my head, I said, "Play it cool." "I like to think I'm part of your family now," I said, again trying to sound super casual, not like my heart was melting. "What do you think?" "Yeah," they said, and went back to eating their snow cone. A snow cone that I had bought them and their two brothers while I had watched them for the day at the park. And they're a silly, sweet kid who loved to craft and make things, and their mind is so creative. They require a lot of attention, like a lot of attention. But in return, they'll draw a picture of you, and that's all worth it. Over the last year, they had learned about being non-binary from me and their two mothers, and they told us at a pride parade in June that they wanted to use they, them pronouns. Their brother's 11 years old, and he's funny and smart and quirky, dorky in the way every 11-year-old boy is. When we were at the park, he jumped up on a rock and he declared, "This is the true meaning of life," and then he started flossing. He flosses better than me. He's a great kid, and he reminds me so much of myself at that age. Their youngest brother is 4 years old, and he's the happiest baby you'll ever meet. He has Down syndrome, so he is slow to develop, but he figures out what makes you laugh, and he'll really ham it up when he does it. He's lovable and cuddly, and he fucking loves to throw things on the ground. Earlier that day, he had been the first poopy diaper I had ever changed. I was watching them while their two mothers were on a trip. One of their mothers is also my ex-wife. Now, I don't know if it makes it weird, more weird or less weird to tell you that I was also on that trip with them for a little bit. And also, I guess technically she's not really my ex-wife because our divorce hadn't been finalized yet. She was just my wife. But it was my ex-wife Charity's 40th birthday. And to celebrate it, we decided to go on a trip, just me and her fiance, Casey. I decided to come back a day early to watch Casey's kids so that Charity and Casey could have a day by themselves and I could have a day with the kids. To say this is an unusual arrangement might be a little bit of an understatement, but we love our queer little family, as unconventional as it might be. And the story of how we got here is a long one, but the short version is that Charity and I had been together for many years. We got together when we were really young, and we've learned so much about ourselves since then. Our relationship has always been a place where we could grow and become our truest self. So when she came to me and told me that she felt like she needed to explore dating women and other people, it was a big deal. But also, it was just another thing for us to work through together. Now, I don't mean to minimize it. It was literally the hardest thing we've ever done. We had a couples therapist, and we had a lot of really hard conversations. We shed a lot of tears. We got really angry a few times. And we had some really tender moments of reconciliation. But the theme we kept coming back in therapy was that we were family. And that no matter what happened, we were going to be family, whatever that looked like. The term we decided on each other were platonic life partners. And then when she started dating a mother of 3 named Casey, and I saw how happy this person made her, I knew they were going to be my family too. At one point, Casey asked me to coffee, and I kind of felt like they had something they wanted to say to me, and they seemed kind of nervous. I almost broke the tension by saying, "What are your intentions with my wife?" But I wasn't really sure how that would go over. I told them later, and they thought it was hilarious. But sure enough, they told me they wanted to propose to Charity, and they wanted me to know, and they wanted to make sure I was okay. They, of course, didn't know me any of that, but it meant a lot to me that they did it. I told them we're family now. A few months later, after the proposal, and after I'd spent several great moments with the whole family, and after we'd gone on the trip together, Casey asked me to be their kid's godparent. Much like their child, they asked me in a very casual way, walking down the street after lunch. My eyes welled up with tears again, but I knew this was anything but casual. And I said yes. And I thought how nice it would be to call these kids my godchildren rather than the children of my ex-wife turned platonic partner's fiance. Now, this family dynamic has made for some interesting moments. There was once when we were walking down the street in their neighborhood on Father's Day, and a neighbor yelled out, "Happy Father's Day." I was about halfway down the street before I realized that was probably meant for me. And then there was the time when I was at the park with Avery, the 7-year-old, and she told me that she really wanted a little sister. And she told me this right as we passed a father and his kid, and he and I made eye contact, and he laughed for the reason he thought it was funny, because he thought this was a daughter telling her father that. And I wanted to say, oh, buddy, you have no idea. This is way funnier than you can imagine. I love those kids dearly, and the time I get to spend with them I cherish. And that day I spent while Charity and Casey were still on their trip will always be a special day to me. That night, after I put the oldest two to bed and said goodnight, I was rocking the youngest one to sleep. Charity had told me he liked it when you sang to him. And I was reminded of this film I had seen with Charity some like 15 years before, of this mother who was rocking her child to sleep, and she was singing Bob Dylan's Mr. Tambourine Man. At the time, I was a 20-year-old hipster who was obsessed with Dylan and indie film, and I thought that was brilliant. So fast forward 15 years and several life changes later, and I was rocking to sleep my godson and singing, "Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy, and there is no place I'm going to." And I pushed back his wispy hair as he fell asleep. This child, who in no way is biologically connected to me, but in that moment, he felt like mine. As queer people, we often have to create family in some untraditional ways. A lot of us have been estranged from our biological families. And I really love the term found family, but really it's more than that. It's not just family we find, it's family that we choose, and that chooses us. And when you find that family, you hold on to them for dear life, and you fight for them. And you find new ways to create love and family over and over again. Thank you.